Hi, this is a quick demo of a tool that I created for configuring the build order of HDAs in Unreal Engine. So I have a demo scene here, and I'm going to go ahead and drag this landscape layer fill HDA into my scene. And as the name would suggest, this is an asset that I created for painting into landscape layers in my scene. So I'm going to go ahead and get this set up. I'm going to turn off the cook triggers. I'm going to leave my edit layer at procedural. I'm going to set my paint layer to base grass. I'm going to set the weight to 0.7. And then finally, I'm going to set my bound selector so that my asset can capture the landscape. So I'll go ahead and cook this, and you should see that the asset is painting into this grass landscape layer. And then my the material I have set on my landscape is using the standard Unreal Engine grass system, which is using this paint layer to determine where to place the grass instances. Now, one of the problems that I have run into with painting into landscape layers using HDAs is that the weights that are painted by this HDA are not cleared when I recook it. So, for example, if I were to move this bound selector over and then recook my HDA, all it's going to do is it's going to paint in a new patch of grass. But the previous weights that were painted into this layer, they aren't cleared. They're still there. So there is a way to deal with this, which is you can, every time you make a change to your bound selector before you recook your asset, you can go into the landscape edit mode and manually clear out the paint layer that you want to paint into. However, I wanted to see if there was a way that I could automate this process. So what I came up with is this Houdini build sequence graph. Now, this is a completely custom type that I have created and added to the engine. So let's go ahead and create one of these. So we'll make a HBSG grass test. Open this up. And here we have an empty Houdini build sequence graph. So what this graph allows you to do is it allows you to chain together certain Unreal specific actions as well as Houdini specific actions and then run them in a particular sequence. So I have some test nodes here, and the first one I want to show you is this clear landscape layers node. So we'll create this, we'll call this clear grass. And what this node does is this node goes to your landscape and tells it to clear out a certain set of paint layers. So I'm going to leave my edit layer at procedural, and then I'm going to set my paint layer to base grass. The next node I'm going to drop down is the cook HDA node. So this is a Houdini specific action, and this node is going to cook some number of HDAs. So let's go ahead and call this paint grass. So this node will go to your scene and it will look for every HDA of a particular type and it will cook those nodes. So I'm going to go ahead and set my asset type to landscape layer fill, and that's going to tell this node, I want to cook every landscape layer fill node that you find in the scene. I'm also going to tell it that I want it to refresh my bound selector every time it runs. So we'll go ahead and wire that up. And then finally, when you clear out the grass layer, the Unreal Engine foliage system doesn't immediately react to that. So typically, what you need to do in order to get the grass to properly update is there's a console command you have to call in order to refresh the grass. So I have a node to do this as well called flush grass cache. So I'm going to just put that down, and under the hood, this node is just going to call that console command. So now that we have everything set up, I'm going to just go ahead and make a manager. Call this HBM grass test, and I will link this manager to my sequence graph, and finally I will pull this into the scene. Now that this manager is in the scene, I can go back to my sequence graph, and this manager, you can now reference it in the graph. So I will target that manager that I've placed in the scene, and now I can run my graph on this scene. So let's go ahead and change this up a little bit. I will widen this a little and move this over here. And let's give this a try. So I'm going to run this. We'll give it a moment. And yep, there we go. So as you can see, the previous weights that were painted into this grass layer have been cleared. We reran our HDA to paint in new grass into the scene. And finally, we called that console command to make sure that the grass has been properly updated.